people start to see how good you are and you start beating the top guys, and there's more incentive and more to gain for having to win against him. So he's going to have to sort of defend that, and people are going to sort of make that extra effort, which I think is good. It will force him to play better. I mean, he's not as big as a lot of these other guys, so he makes up for that because he's very fast and he's got that live arm, which makes it almost seem like when he played Burdick, he seemed like he was as tall as him, and then when they shook hands, you realize there's a 4 or 5 inch disadvantage in height. So he's going to have to overcome that, and that will be an issue at times because. But for a guy his size, he plays a big guy's tennis. So you got look, Milos is going to come back and do some things. You got Dennis, you got Felix, the other young kid, and all those guys. To me, I mean, Milos has already finished 3 in the world. I believe both Dennis and Felix are going to be for sure top 10, top 5 players. So I never thought I'd be sitting in Toronto saying that the Canadian young players are better than the Americans, but that's the way it appears right now. So that should be more of an incentive for us in America to sort of really make more of a concerted effort. We got some good young players too, and they have some upside also. But I don't know if at the moment they have the upside of those guys.
Felix hasn't made the big splash that Dennis has yet. He's younger. What sells you on him? What excites you as a tennis guy about what Felix could do?
Well, he sort of looks like he's 25 when he's 17, his body. So that reminded me of Becker and Nadal a little bit. So he's going to go through some bumps in the road, just like Dennis did. When, I mean, I'd still be in jail if I was. So he's. I guess he's a better guy, a better kid. He handled it better, and so these issues will come up for these young kids. I mean, these guys aren't going to fall over and let them just take over. So I think it's an exciting time because it's so unpredictable and wide open, especially next year or two after Roger and Rafa's come down to earth. And I mean, I suspect Novak will start to get his act together more. And but there's still a big gap and an opening for these 2 guys and some other guys.
You and Connors had a great rivalry back in the day. What's that like to have a fellow compatriot, a fellow American pushing you guys, pushing one another?
I mean, I think it's going to be great for those 2 guys because, I mean, there was a bigger age gap with me and Jimmy, 6.5 years, so that's quite a bit. So he didn't want to give up his throne. I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to give it up. I didn't want to lose it to the Samprases and Agassiz. They were even bigger age gaps. So, but I think ultimately a great rivalry, you see that both players make each other better. And I suspect that's what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years with those 2. And the Tiafos and some of these other young Americans, there's a few, obviously Zverev has established himself as 3 in the world and some other young guys, and we need that. And we can't depend on those top couple guys forever.
Yeah, it's consciously like what they think about a lot of these guys sometimes, that there's a lot of pride, not just for themselves, but for their country as well.
I would hope so. There's not a lot of great history of high-level success in tennis in Canada. So Milos, he was the first guy ever to finish 3 in the world, and make a run and get to the finals of Wimbledon. So that's definitely a shot in the arm, and I'm sure it made those young kids believe more and want it more. To see that someone from their neck of the woods did it. That's how it works. So I'm excited. I think that it's important that some players can come out of countries where it's unexpected, but it's also important, I think, for tennis that some top players, and we've had it in the women, we've had it in the men for a while. We've had solid, very good players, but ones that win majors. We need that in America to boost the game.
Obviously, you've had the relationship with Milos. A lot of talk about Dennis and Felix right now. Where do you see Milos's place in the game right now? He's got Goran in his corner now. Where do you see his place right now?
Well, I see it when you look at some of the other guys. They need to get healthy. He's had a lot of bad luck. He takes it very seriously, and sometimes he gets himself in trouble with maybe overanalyzing things. And but I respect someone like Milos because there's not many guys that are willing to go out and publicly say, hey, I want to be the best, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, and that puts a lot more pressure on yourself. So. That takes guts to say that, and that should be respected. So, but I suspect, knowing him and his game, it's all about if he gets healthy. If he can be that way for a couple of years, he'll be back in the mix. And believe me, there's no one that would want to play him in Wimbledon or the quick courts. And he'll get back to the top 10 if he just hasn't been able to stay healthy in the last year and a half, pretty much. And that's been a big obviously a big problem since he finished the end of 2016. He's 3 in the world. He went out in the next month and he played Nadal at the Australian. He was in the quarters. I mean, Nadal played an unbelievable match. And then I worked with him this was the last real week we worked before Del Rey, and he was in the finals and he had a default. Now this has to be 6-7 tournaments at least that he hasn't been able to finish. And, that's just going to drive anyone crazy. So that hurts your confidence, and you second guess. And so you can see with him and Wawrinka and Murray and Novak to some extent. I mean, if you're not feeling right physically, it just goes right to your head.
One last question. We have another commitment.
You're a Rangers fan, close with Henrik Lundqvist. They're going through a bit of a retooling phase right now. What's your perspective of that, and the fact that Henrik's kind of on board with being part of it?
Well, I mean, Henrik is someone that's was and is a great representative of the Rangers, and obviously as a friend and a fan, I would love to see him win one, and we've been close a couple times. Me personally, I always wanted to see my buddy Mark Messier coach, and he was real close the last time, and I don't know what's going to happen, but to me he should be involved, and if not coach, the GM, and that to me he was the greatest leader, one of the greatest, if not the greatest leader in the history of sports, in my opinion, team guy, and so